What is up, DS3TV, and we are here for another video. The United Kingdom, British Isles, and Great Britain, the difference, channel history. Yeah, I kind of wanted to know what was the difference between all three of these things. I might know like a little bit about it, but not a lot. So I actually want to know like the exact difference between all of these things. So yeah, that'll be pretty fun to see, and let's get into it.
Welcome back, History with Hilbert here, and I'm making this video today because I need to clear a few things up about some terminology of the British Isles and Britain, Great Britain, the United Kingdom, and all of these words that sound alike but have different meanings. Now, I think it's fair to say that a few people were a bit, I don't know, triggered, they disagreed with me calling Ireland as part of the British Isles, and they had, loads of comments, and there was a slight war in the comment section and whatnot. But don't worry, History with Hilbert is here to clear all this up, and some history behind it as well, of course, so why we have all these different names, what they entail, and what's part of them. So let's have a look. What actually is Great Britain? What are the British Isles? And what are the different countries within them? And why are they there? And why are they called what they are? Well, we're going to start from the very basics and have a look at each of the countries inside the British Isles. So the first one is England. Now, England is named after the Anglo-Saxons, the Germanic people who invaded this part of the British Isles in the from around the 5th to the 6th centuries. Yeah. And England actually comes from Anglaland, which is the Old English word for England, which means land of the Angles. And again, the Angles were one of these peoples, Germanic peoples, who settled. Now, England is the one that's underneath the blue line, which is the border with Scotland, and on the other side of the red line, which is the border with Wales. And essentially, England is the land that the Anglo-Saxons managed to conquer and to keep a hold of in the early days, so in the early Middle Ages. Now, the borders of Scotland is slightly trickier, but I'm going to explain that one right away. But that essentially is England. The flag has the St. George's cross on it, which is a red cross on a white background. And that's pretty much all I'm going to say about England. Now, Scotland is to the north of England, and Scotland, actually the name comes from the Scoti, which was a name the Romans gave to the Irish. Now you might be thinking, well, the Irish aren't from Scotland, so why is Scotland named after the Irish? Well, in the 5th century, the Irish actually invaded part of Scotland and formed the kingdom of Dal Riada, which was in the southwest of Scotland and the north of Ireland. And these people eventually managed to conquer the rest of Scotland by uniting with the Picts, who were a different Scottish people, and they then formed the kingdom of modern-day Scotland, and that's essentially where the name comes from. Now, the name of Scotland in Gaelic, which was the language they spoke, is Alaba. Now, I'm going to apologise because I mispronounced this in the previous video, but someone kindly corrected me in the comment section. There is actually a third syllable in Alaba. It's spelled Alba, but it's pronounced Alaba. Scotland's flag is the St. Andrew's cross, also called a saltire, which is like a cross but then sort of diagonal, and this is because St. Andrew, the patron saint of Scotland, I believe he was crucified on a cross that was shaped more like a saltire. And this actually, interesting fact, continued to happen in Scotland. People would still crucify people right up into, I think, the Jacobite risings, in this sort of cross shape, as well as burning crosses, which is also where the Ku Klux Klan get their burning crosses from. It's actually an old Gaelic tradition which has nothing to do with hating black people, but that's very much a diversion. So the next one we're going to look at is Wales. Now, Wales is this one that's to the west of England. It pretty much sticks out of the main body of land on the bigger island of the two, and the name Wales actually comes from an Old English word, which is interesting because Wales is particularly seen as a Celtic country. And it comes from what the Anglo-Saxons called the Welsh, which was Walish. And Walish actually comes from an Old English word, which means foreigner. So they called the Welsh the foreigners because the Welsh were the Britons. So these were the sort of indigenous inhabitants when the Anglo-Saxons arrived in Britain, and that's why the English called them the foreigners. They weren't Anglican, which is what they called the Anglekin. So the English, that's where that term as well comes from, but they were the foreigners. Now, in Welsh, the word for Wales is Cymru, and Cymru means something like kin or family. And actually, in the county which is to the west of mine, so on the northwest coast of England, you have a county called Cumberland, and this comes from an older area called Cumbria, which comes from the same root as Cymru, because the Cumbrians for a long time were an independent Celtic kingdom. The kingdom of Cregid was, or Cregid probably, was an independent kingdom, and that has a similar root. Now the flag of Wales has got the red dragon, and there's a very interesting story about the red dragon and the white dragon. The red dragon representing the British and the white dragon representing the Saxons, and I can't remember who had the vision, but there's a vision of the two fighting, and it's the sort of the tale of the Anglo-Saxons coming to Britain and fighting against the Britons. And somebody's profile picture actually commented that their profile picture was the white dragon. So if you ever see a white dragon, that's the Anglo-Saxon dragon. The red dragon is the Welsh dragon, or the more specifically the British or Celtic dragon. Now the next one we're going to look at is the Republic of Ireland. Now, as you can see, the other island in its entirety is called Ireland, but I'll get onto that in a minute. And the Republic of Ireland is an independent nation. So you see that Wales and Scotland and Northern Ireland, which I'll cover next, are all in a union with England, so they're all part of what's called the United Kingdom. So the head of state for all of them is the Queen, and I'm not exactly sure what else, but there is a union between them. The Republic of Ireland, however, is an independent country. They rule themselves. They are still part of the European Union. Well, technically Britain is as well, but that's gone down the drain a bit. That's not going to be happening anymore because of Brexit. But the Republic of Ireland, for all intents and purposes, is as independent to Britain as the Netherlands is. So that is a completely independent country. Now the reason why the Republic of Ireland is independent, well, as you can see, it's a different island, and already from I think the 12th century with the Norman invasion with Strongbow, the English have had land in Ireland, and they gradually conquered more land in Ireland until they had conquered the whole area and it was part of the United Kingdom. However, the Irish felt themselves as a different people, which they were. They had their own language, which was Irish, their own customs, Gaelic customs, and to be fair, the English and the Scots and essentially the British in Ireland were not very nice. They really weren't very nice neighbours at all. And in 1916, that's just one of the rebellions. There were many rebellions throughout Ireland's history against English rule. There was a very famous rebellion called the Easter Rising in 1916, where Irish Republicans and Irish nationalists took over large areas in Dublin. For example, the post office is very famous and held out and proclaimed the Irish Republic. Now this was put down, lots of the leaders were executed, but after this a sort of guerrilla war began against the English in Ireland. And in 1922 there was a peace treaty, and I can't remember exactly what it was called, but essentially Ireland became an independent country in 1922. However, 6 counties in the north, Northern Ireland, had a majority of Unionists, so people who felt more British than Irish and wanted to stay in the United Kingdom.
I've never seen the Northern Ireland flag. I've never seen that until just now.
But there was a significant minority of Irish Republicans / Irish nationalists who felt Irish. Now this was generally also to do with religion. It's not necessarily so, but most of the time the Catholics in Northern Ireland would feel more of an affinity towards the Republic, that they felt Irish, and the Protestants in Northern Ireland would feel more Unionist and therefore more United Kingdom. And so they split, and 6 counties in the north of Ireland, the counties of Antrim, County Down, Armagh, Londonderry, Fermanagh and Tyrone, became Northern Ireland, which was still a part of the United Kingdom. However, the south, on the other 26 counties of Ireland that became the Republic of Ireland, became an independent country from Great Britain and the United Kingdom. Now let's have a look which bits are which. So this big island here is called Britain, and the little island is called Ireland. Now this is fairly simple. So then we also have the name Great Britain and Ireland. Now there are a few theories as to where Great Britain comes from. One of them is that I think the Romans or the Greeks called Ireland, they called that Little Britain. I know there's a comedy as well called Little Britain. And they called the big ones, so England, Scotland, Wales, they called that Great Britain because there were 2 islands and you call one Magna. I can't remember what the Latin is for small now, but yeah, that's what they called them. And now another explanation is that there is an area in northern France called Brittany,
The reason why, and some people mentioned this in the comments as well, I didn't actually talk about Breton in my languages of the British Isles because it's not in the British Isles, but I will cover that in a later one. When the Anglo-Saxons invaded, some of the Britons went to Cornwall, some went to Wales, and others crossed the Channel and went to Brittany, and this is why it's called Brittany, because of the Britons, the Celtic population, and they brought their language with them. So the Breton language, which is still spoken there today, is a lot like Cornish and a little bit like Welsh, because it's from there. And then obviously this would be seen as Little Brittany, and the other Britain, which is a lot larger than essentially the sea arm in northwestern France, is then called Great Britain. Now let's have a look where everything is. So, or for the flags actually, because first of all you have this union of England and Wales have been united for quite a long time already, since the Middle Ages. They did have a very cool resistance figure who is, I'm hesitant to say the Welsh Braveheart, but you can sort of see him in that light, called Owen Glendour, and I hope I'm pronouncing that right. And he's a very cool guy. I was very interested in him as a young lad actually. I'll make some videos about him. But England and Wales have been united for a very long time, and with the union of England and Scotland under James I of England, and I think he's James V or VI of Scotland, the crowns of England and Scotland united, and obviously Wales was already a part of England, so that sort of went by the by. So these two crowns united and you get this nice flag, and this was in the 17th century. I really should have written this down. Now you also get the English, or the British now rather, because you've got the Scottish, the Welsh and the English all in one union. They also managed to finish the conquest of Ireland, and then you add in what's called St. Patrick's Saltire, which is, St. Patrick is the patron saint of Ireland, so this is another Irish flag. And when you add that to the design of the St. George's Cross and the Saltire, you get the Union Jack. Now I think there's more lines in the modern Union Jack, but I'm not exactly sure where they come from, maybe from Northern Ireland or something like that. But then as well you get in 1922, obviously Ireland left the United Kingdom and formed their own country, the Republic of Ireland, or sometimes just called Ireland. I think that's the official name, but I'm going to call it the Republic in this one just to not be confused with the whole island, which is called Ireland. And then obviously you have England, Wales, Scotland and Northern Ireland, which now make up part of the United Kingdom, and that's the flags behind it. So let's have a look at each bit and which bit is which. So England, remember, is that country there. Wales is that one. Scotland is up north. Now you have Northern Ireland, which is the 6 northern counties in Ireland, and the Republic of Ireland, also sometimes just called Ireland, or Southern Ireland or something like that. Independent country, the remaining 26 counties of Ireland. Now Britain, remember, is the big island, so the countries in Britain are Scotland, Wales and England. Then you get Great Britain, which is just Britain but better. Then you get Ireland, which as an island, remember, is has 2 countries on it, Northern Ireland and the Republic of Ireland. Then you have the United Kingdom, which is England, Scotland, Wales and Northern Ireland. Then you have the British Isles, which is everything. Yeah. And I'm going to tell you why the people commenting Ireland is not a British Isle shouldn't really be commenting that, and why actually they should be quite proud to be called a British Isle. Now a lot of the problems, I think, came from the fact that people didn't like it being called a British Isle because of the English or British occupation of Ireland, and then finally when they became independent they just don't want to be considered part of it. But what this actually is the United Kingdom, which is, remember, this union of the crowns of England, Scotland and Ireland, as well as Wales. Now the term British Isles comes from Britons, who were the Celtic population. And the Celtic population of Britain and Ireland, while they spoke P and Q Celtic languages, which is a slight difference, they are related kin. So actually being called part of the British Isles, which Ireland is, even though it's an independent country, it doesn't matter, because the British Isles is a term like Scandinavia, because it's just a geographic location rather than countries which are joined together, because Denmark, Norway and Sweden are all independent as well, but they do make up Scandinavia. But the British Isles, the term comes from the Britons, so a Celtic people, so it has nothing to do with, and this is simplifying the conflict quite a lot, but it has nothing to do with the Anglo-Saxons and the English invading Ireland. The British Isles is a term that's been used before England existed, before the Anglo-Saxons existed, before they came to England and conquered anywhere, because the Romans were already using it. So actually being part of the British Isles is another way of saying part of the Celtic Isles. And I don't really think the Irish should have too much of a problem with being part of the British Isles. I mean, it's not like it's called the Saxon Isles or the English Isles, it's the British Isles. And if you watch my last video about the languages, there are 2 Germanic languages spoken in Britain, or the British Isles, and there are far more Celtic languages spoken, far more. You've got Manx, Scots, Gaelic, you've got Irish, you've got Welsh, you've got Cornish, you know, so there's a lot more Celtic stuff there. So British, although it has
The camera died. That's all of the video that we got today, and talk to you guys in the next video, and peace.